You couldn't brace yourself because you never saw it coming. You didn't have your guard up because you thought you were safe. It never crossed your mind that the person you loved, you trusted, you felt safe with would ever hurt you. So because of that, you gave your heart, your love, your loyalty, your trust. And then one day, out of the blue, you make a painful discovery, and that one life-altering moment gets forever tattooed on your mind and on your heart. It's as if the person you loved, the one you trusted, just took a mask off, revealing who they've really been this whole time. Your heart breaks, and the pain is so raw, so real, so all-consuming, you could barely breathe. You feel like you got sucker punched. Nothing makes sense. So you frantically start questioning everything, including yourself. How did this happen? How did I not know? The shock, the lies, the deception. You feel so rejected, so abandoned, so alone. You don't know what to think. You don't know what to feel. You don't know what to do. The only thing you know for sure is that life will never be the same. That's what it feels like to be blindsided by betrayal. How do I know? Because that's what happened to me, along with millions of other people who struggle to make sense and recover from one of the most painful of the human experiences. It was my betrayal, first from my family and then from my husband, that had me feeling just like that. I felt so sad, so hurt, so confused. And that confusion sent me on a search for answers. I was desperate to understand how the mind works, why we do what we do, and how I could heal. That search led to a PhD program in transpersonal psychology. That's the psychology of transformation and human potential. And while I was there, I did a study. I studied how we experience betrayal, what holds us back, what helps us heal, and what happens to us physically, mentally, and emotionally when the people closest to us lie, cheat, deceive. That study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries. The first was that healing from betrayal is very different than healing from other life crises, death of a loved one, disease, natural disaster. With any crisis, we grieve, we're sad, we mourn. But because betrayal feels so intentional, we take it so personally. So the whole self has to be rebuilt. Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust, they all have to be rebuilt. So that type of healing needed its own name, which is now called post-betrayal transformation. The second discovery: while we can stay stuck for years, decades, a lifetime, and many of us do, if we're going to heal, we're going to move through 5 stages. What's even more exciting is now we know what happens at every stage, physically, mentally, emotionally, and we know what it takes to move from one stage to the next. So now healing isn't just hopeful or possible, it's predictable. I'll never forget handing my research over to my study chair, who read it and said, "Debbie, I believe you've discovered a process here." That was the moment I knew that millions of people would find comfort in knowing that there's a systematic approach to healing from something they thought they'd never recover from. The third discovery: there's a collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional, so common to betrayal, it's known as post-betrayal syndrome. Now here's the big misconception. We've been taught time heals all wounds. That's not true. Within 1 year, we've had over 4,000 people take the post-betrayal syndrome assessment quiz on our site to see to what extent they're still struggling. Every age, so many different countries. And there's a question that reads, is there anything else you'd like to share? Besides reading about the pain, the heartbreak, the physical, mental, and emotional symptoms left in the wake of this type of trauma, people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago, I'm unwilling to trust again. My betrayal happened 40 years ago, I can still feel the hate. My betrayal happened 15 years ago, I feel gutted. We've also learned that 67% of people who take the quiz prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. 84% have an inability to trust. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how. And betrayal affects every area of life. It affects us in business or in relationships, where if we don't learn the profound lesson that betrayal was there to teach, we have repeat betrayals The faces change, but it's the same thing. Or we put that big wall up. We're not letting anybody get close to our heart again. Sure, we keep out the bad guys, but we keep out the good guys too. We see it in health, where people spend so much time, money, effort, and energy going to the most well-meaning doctors, coaches, healers, therapists to manage a stress-related symptom, illness, condition, disease. At the root of all that stress, an unhealed betrayal. And we see it in business, where people want to be a team player, but they're so afraid. The person they trusted the most proved untrustworthy. How are they going to trust a boss or a coworker? Or they want to ask for that raise or promotion. They deserve it, but their confidence was shattered in that betrayal, so they don't ask. And they're bitter and resentful instead. And that's the energy they're bringing to work with them every day. And what does someone who's been betrayed look like? Here's the typical profile of the men and women we see in our programs every single day. Meet Sue. Before she says a word, you could feel her stress, her anxiety, her sadness, her pain. She can't sleep, so she's taking something to help her sleep, maybe having a glass of wine or two. She's exhausted, so she's using sugar and caffeine for energy, which is one of the reasons why she's been gaining weight recently. She's so anxious she can't focus, so her doctor prescribed mood stabilizers and anti-anxiety medications to help her get through the day, manage her mood. Her gut is wrecked, her immune system is shot. She's filled with so much heartbreak, sadness, anxiety, and grief because she's been blindsided by an experience with betrayal. Sue can't undo her betrayal, just like I can't undo mine and you can't undo yours. What we can do is prevent how long it affects our relationships, our health, our work, our lives. You see, the gift in betrayal is it lays the foundation for transformation if we're willing to use the experience as an opportunity to learn and grow. I'm going to explain what I mean using an analogy of a house. See, here's the difference between resilience and transformation. Resilience is bringing back, restoring. That's a worthy goal. You need that for your everyday. Transformation is different. So, using the analogy of the house, let's say the house needs a new boiler, and you get that new boiler. That's resilience. Let's say it needs a new paint job, and you paint. That's resilience. Let's say it needs a new roof. You get that new roof. That's resilience. You're bringing it back. You're restoring. Here's transformation. A tornado comes by and levels your house. A new boiler's not going to fix it. A new paint job's not going to fix it. A new roof's not going to fix it. And in fact, all three aren't going to fix it. Now, you have every right to stand there at the lot where your house once stood and say, oh my gosh, this is the scariest, horrible, awful, most tragic thing I've ever seen. And you'd be right. And you can call all your friends over and say, look at this. Isn't this the most horrible, terrible, tragic, awful thing you've ever seen? They'd all agree. You have every right to stand there at the lot where your house once stood and mourn the loss of your house until your last breath. However, should you choose to rebuild your house, remember, you don't have to do anything. But should you choose to rebuild your house, why would you build the same house? There's nothing there. Why not give it everything the old house didn't have? Why not make it bigger, better, more beautiful? Rebuilding is always a choice. Whether you rebuild yourself and move on, that's what I did with my family. Or if the situation lends itself, if you're willing and if you want to, you rebuild an entirely different relationship with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. Not long ago, as two totally different people, we married each other again. New rings, new vows, new dress, and this time our 4 kids as our bridal party. Trauma is the setup for transformation. If you imagine a pendulum, before trauma, we're like this. And then trauma sends us here. This isn't the problem. The problem isn't that you find yourself here. The problem is that you stay here. The problem is that you feel like you belong here. The problem is that you plant roots here. No. Here's where you gather your thoughts. Here's where you create a new plan. Here's where you have all the motivation and incentive to do this. Swing to greatness. When you think of any thought leader of our time, they're not teaching us much from here. And they're in too much pain to teach us from here. They've done this, and this is what they're teaching us how to do. When you heal from your betrayal, you learn to love again, trust again, feel safe again, open your heart again. When you heal, you learn that even though it was done to you, it wasn't about you. When you heal, you see a version of yourself emerge that never would have shown up had that experience not happened. And when you take your trauma and you turn it into transformation, that's an idea worth spreading. Thank you.